Assalamu alaikum, dear siblings. Today I wanted to share my own reasons for abstaining from alcohol, and I will share my own personal history of alcohol consumption and my past attitude toward alcohol. Then I will share three incidents which shook my old convictions regarding this vice. So, growing up, alcohol was always in and around the house. My father and my mother were both prolific drinkers in their youth. And my mother, for example, would be asked by brides to be their bridesmaids, since it is tradition in some areas of China to try to get the bride drunk on her wedding night. But the bride has the option to choose a champion to represent her in this battle. The wedding guests had to defeat the bridesmaids before they would be granted the right to challenge the bride herself. So, since my mother handled alcohol well, the wedding guests never seemed to be able to drink her under the table. So, she was a very popular bridesmaid. After she became older and more wise, um, she rarely drank alcohol and was actually against the idea of excessive alcohol consumption. And she was right, of course. Especially for me, she was, very afraid that I would drink too much. My father, on the other hand, believed one should be inoculated. With that, he meant that it was better for his children to get used to the consumption of alcohol early on in their lives so that they would not face nasty surprises later on in their social lives or anything else if you can't handle your liquor. For this reason, my first run in with alcohol was actually quite early. I don't remember exactly which year it was, but it was definitely before YouTube was banned in China. So I was with the son of one of my father's good friends. And during a dinner, both of us were first introduced to baijiu. Baijiu is a highly distilled alcoholic drink ranging from around 35% to 60%. And I thought alcohol was a drink for men and grown-ups, even though I didn't like it. So while it burned and it was, a bad feeling, I did feel very macho as I drank it. And feeling macho is actually one of the main reasons I continued drinking as the years went on. Indeed, since alcohol is a toxin, I would call this literally toxic masculinity. So during all of this, my mother was quite against the idea of me drinking. She was, of course, right. However, as the years went on, especially as I turned 16, you used to be able to drink when you turned 16 in the Netherlands. My drinking also became more frequent. Although my dad would always warn against becoming an alcoholic, he did not mind a beer or a whiskey once in a while. So, following in his footsteps, I also, did not mind whiskey or beer once in a while. So, years later, we stayed at a Buddhist temple in Titian, Guangdong province. And this is called Tai Mien in Cantonese. And the abbot was a portly, middle-aged man, and he held some interesting ideas about faith. So my father asked him some interesting questions, but also about drinking. He asked him whether it was okay to use alcohol once in a while, once in a blue moon. For surely drinking once in a while is not a problem. It can't be bad. And the monk said something very peculiar, and he said, no, 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 no. If you drink, you are of the lowest level, even if you meditate and study the religious texts. So I don't think the statement of that monk took immediate effect, but indeed, a few years later, my father did decide to abstain totally from alcohol, and this was the first seed that was planted in my mind. Yet, it would take a few more incidents for me to follow in his footsteps completely and abstain. Seeds require time and nourishment to grow. I continued in my ways and continued to party with alcohol. And the second incident occurred when I was invited to a drum and bass event. The guys offered me some ecstasy, and I refused. I said, I don't do drugs. I said that drugs destroyed the Chinese Empire. and I refused to partake in the very thing that ruined my country, my nation, my ancestral land. So corruption, prostitution, gambling were the other vices that contributed to this downfall as well. And the guy looked at me funny and he said, "But you do drink?" And I said, "Yes." To which he replied, "So what's the difference?" And frankly, I had no answers to this. He was absolutely right. Absolutely. There is no difference. And moreover, he was being more honest and he was being more consistent and true to himself than I was. Because at least he acknowledged that both were drugs. But he didn't draw an arbitrary distinction between alcohol and other forms of intoxicants. As such, he saw no issue in using either. This was a major source of nutrition for the seed of abstinence within me. And aside from the fact that I had a miserable time at the drum and bass event, I assume due to not consuming drugs, I went home with a lot of food for thought. Yeah, so the third incident and final nail in the coffin for my old belief that alcohol was a manly drink occurred when I went out to hang out with a few of my friends, my old classmates actually. We'd just gone and played pool and decided to get a few drinks at the local pub. One of my mates was a Muslim from Afghanistan, and when we went to get our beers, he ordered a Coca-Cola. Out of curiosity, I asked whether he would not, rather have a beer, like the rest of us. And this answer I'll never forget. He answered simply, "Ik hoef dat vergif niet in mijn lijf," which means, I don't need that poison inside of my body. Poison. Indeed, that is what it is, and what it always will be. Ordinary poison that does nothing but to destroy your body and lead you astray. So now the seed of abstinence lay in fertile soil, and while I had some run-ins with alcohol later, after this incident, the run-ins became less and less frequent, and I felt less and less good after each run-in. And after a few unfortunate alcohol-infused nights, which I regret to this day, I decided to abstain completely. So the coffin was already nailed shut, but now it had been buried 6 feet under. A few months later, I took the Shahada. I see these clear-cut events as guidance from Allah. He led me away from these vices, which opened my heart to His guidance. Thus far, the story of my journey towards abstinence, teetotalism. So I hope you can relate to my experiences and understand my reasonings and motivations for refusing to drink poison. So thank you for listening. I wish upon you peace, blessings, and mercy. And until next time.